Hello, it's Fred with another FontForge tutorial. Today's topic is Diacritics in FontForge. These are also called combining marks. Some people call them accents. Some know them as combining characters. Whatever you call them, there's two ways that we work with them in fonts. Either we have pre-combined characters, which already have the marks, or we have a mark table, which takes the character and then the mark that goes above, below, strike through, any kind of way that the mark affects the original character, and we just use that table to position the mark above the character. One thing that is sometimes also done is the ccmp table, which I'll discuss a little bit, but that's kind of a rare case. So let's dive right in. There's two kinds, as I said. The pre-combined characters, and then fonts which don't use pre-combined characters. So first, let's briefly talk about the pre-combined, and I'll get back to this. So we have here Chomsky, which is a font that I made, and we have, let's say, the N tilde here, right? So this is a character named N tilde, and it's built from an N and a tilde. And FontForge can do this automatically. Element, build, build accented. You can see that it looks exactly the same. Now, I'll get back to that, but I want to start with this font over here, which I also created, called OpenType. And this font is for the Baybayin script of the Tagalog language. And the reason that I want to start with this font is that it's for, first of all, a simple script. It's not like Latin where you have many edge cases and there's so many glyphs, and in the Latin script there's so many ways that you can, for example, modify a letter O. You can have like 10 different things on top, tons on the bottom, you can have a strike through. So let's start simple. This script, we only have 17 letters, 18 depending on who you ask. If you ask me, it's 18, but many would say 17. And we have just 3 different combining marks: the kudlit I, the kudlit O, and the virama. So you don't really need to know this language or this script. This is all just for showing how fonts work. And it's very valuable because of how simple it is. So let me show that real quick. Let's consider these 3 letters. Ka, la, ma. Kalama. So, in this language, when you have a letter, it has an implicit after it. This is called the Brahmic form. And many other scripts do this. It's called a Brahmic script. And like many Brahmic scripts, we have a virama. So if we stick a virama here, now we have the word kalma, right? And you'll see that this virama, which is in the same of a plus sign, there's also an alternate virama, which is in the shape of an X. We can see that this virama, it moved based on the letter it's combining with. You can see we're combining with la. And if I turn off the mark table, we'll see that it shifts slightly up. Yeah. So, one thing, it's based on the mark and the anchor. So, if we look at the la here, we can see that it has an anchor here, anchor -1, which is its bottom anchor. So, the virama and the alternate virama also has an anchor -1, which is how it combines. So, when those two are together, the mark table says that they ought to combine. And the same is true for the kudlit I and kudlit U. So let's go back to our original state, kalama. Let's have a kudlit I here. Now this would be kalami, right? So again, if we disable our mark, see how much that moves? Now, there are different ways of doing this, and you'll sometimes see in old fonts, they'll do a hack. So instead of trying to use the mark table, which, you know, they really didn't really have then, what they would do, let's say no mark table, right, just for demonstration, they would move this little guy, so, and in negative space, like that. But do you see the problem with this? Now, the character before the kudlit E all has to be basically the same shape, or we will get a collision. For example, if we have this letter, which is somewhat taller, right? Without our mark, this doesn't make sense anymore. We would want to put that like this, right? At least in this script, that's how it's supposed to look. But if we do that, well, then our ma is messed up. It's in the wrong place. We need to move it back. So you'll often see this hack in old fonts, but it's not the correct way. The correct way is to use the mark table, and that's what I'm going to teach. Okay, so I've created a version of the font here that does not have any OpenType tables defining marks. It doesn't have the mark, it doesn't have the mark to base. And I will just show a little bit about how this works. So, and how to make it work. A few things. I recommend that we always add the marks in the char view. The reason for that is, while it's possible in the other view in the font info, that is sometimes quite buggy. And I've actually discovered a few bugs while working on this, which I will report, and hopefully that'll change by, you know, either the next release or the next release. Some of them I might even be able to fix on my own. But anyway, for now, I recommend adding the marks in the char view. So why don't we do that? As I showed, we need a top mark, and we also need a bottom mark. So let's add 2 of those to this right now. So let's add a base glyph with a top, and down here, a new class named bottom, and making sure that it is a, yes, bottom base glyph. Okay, and now let's go to a few of the marks, kudlit.e, and let's mark this as a mark. There we go, making sure it's top. And kudlit.u will be the mark in bottom, and so will the virama. Alright, and let's also add it to the ga, and this is all we do. We just like this, making sure that the base glyph is selected, and that's it. So now let's add our OpenType tables as we need them. Element, font info, lookups, GPOS, add lookup, mark to base, and we will call this one mark. Now you see these 3 others here? RQD can sometimes be useful. It's a flag that the interpreter should always enable this feature, but mark tends to be the most universal. And these other 2, unless you really know you need them, I wouldn't recommend them. I would always use mark. So let's hit OK. Add subtitle, OK. And we will give it a new anchor class. So we'll give one class top and the other bottom, just as we named in the other, in our glyphs over there. And we'll hit OK to approve those. And now we will look at anchor control for the bottom. So we see we've got our ka, and we've got our kudlit u and our virama. Now, as I said, it is possible to use this to make small tweaks, like that, right? So we can slightly change how it looks. But I would recommend doing all the adding in the char view. And hit OK. And frequently pressing OK to make sure that nothing's going wrong or nothing's going haywire. But it is possible to add base anchors here. So I'll show that. Just a quick tip. All of the glyphs in this font have names that are easy to remember. For example, underscore la is the Tagalog letter La. And I really recommend that. And the reason is because by default, FontForge will give your glyphs names if they are outside of, let's say, the glyphs that most Europeans care about. It will give them names just based on their Unicode representation. And unless you have the Unicode table memorized, you're not likely to remember that. For example, our Tagalog letter Ga here would be called Uni 1704, and Nga would be 1705, Ta 1706, and so on. Now, if you've got those memorized, more power to you, but I would recommend giving all your glyphs names, especially if we're going to be doing OpenType stuff. So we've added our La. Let's hit OK. Hit OK. Alright, seems like everything's working. And we can see over here, if we look at our La, that it does have the anchor added. So why don't we add a few more? And we know that we actually have one more mark anchor. Now sometimes this doesn't work, but let's give it a try anyway. We will try to add it as a mark, kudlit.o. Unfortunately, it wanted to be a base. And this happens sometimes. FontForge isn't perfect. That's why I said we should really be adding them in the char view. So why don't we do that? Cancel, cancel. And there is the kudlit.o. And we will just take this bottom here, get info, and we will make sure that it's marked as a mark. Okay. And now when we go to our font info and we look here, we will see that suddenly, okay, it's in the right place. So I'll be trying to fix that, but for now, always add it in the char view first. Alright, and I'll just show real quick that this worked. If we go to our metrics view, Control K, we can see that one of our letters I added it to, the Ka, we can have our kudlit.u. Can't we? And let's do a little debugging, huh? So we don't see the mark listed here. Why not? We see that we've added it. It could be that we haven't added it to the right languages. So let's check. Edit metadata. Okay. We have it in default, Boogie default, Hanuno default, and Tagalog default. But it seems like we haven't added it to Latin default. See how that's listed here? So let's do that. Because we want it to combine even if there's Latin letters nearby. So let's hit OK and hit OK. And now hopefully it should be listed. I probably have to hit OK one final time. There we go. There we are. So we have our kudlit U, our kudlit E, and you might say it's a little bit close. So like I said, real simple, just go in here into the mark, and this works perfectly for small adjustments. So go like that, and the Ga looks a little close too, so, you know, hit OK, OK. And you can see it instantly updates here in our metrics view. And the letters that we haven't done yet, like the Ha, you can see that it doesn't have it. But as soon as we go into our font info and we add it to the top, anchor control, add a base, letter Ha, we can see that as soon as we, as soon as we drag this and we add it, everything should work. There we are. So there's really not much else to say about the mark, but there is another part to this called a mark. So I will discuss that also. Alright, so we have finished our first two topics. We've talked about the combining and we've talked about the mark table. So let's talk about mark. Now mark just means a mark relative to a mark. And this happens in many languages like Vietnamese. Now we're going to keep using our Tagalog script here because it's so simple. in relationship to other languages. So, for example, in the Tagalog script, an element of it is that you can have, let's say, the word cocoa like this, right? That one would be ko, and then this would be cocoa. However, there's another way we can do it. We can just have the second mark relative to the first mark, right? But you see that that won't work because they're just appearing right on top of each other because the mark is zero width. So what can we do to solve that? Well, if we look at my finished version, we'll see how it's supposed to look like that. That would be cocoa. And we can even have, at least in the orthography of Norman de los Santos, we can have cuco, we can have cuckoo, koku, cuckoo also. So I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. We can have all of that. So, how do we support this? Okay. We need a mark table, which is a mark relative to a mark. So let's go here to our kudlit O. Oops, wrong file. That's the finished file. Yes, in our OB2. Alright, let's go here to our kudlit O. We have our bottom, but we don't have any mark. Now, where we put the mark in the base is important. For what we want to do, stacking to the right, we want to have our mark here and our base here. And I will show that. So let's first add the table so that it will come up as an option. So add lookup, mark to mark, and this will be mark. And just make sure we've got all our languages we need. Yup, we sure do. And the order matters. This is something that, I'm not sure if anybody's ever seen this as a bug, but it's not really a bug, it's just how OpenType works. The order of the lookups matters. So the mark should always be interpreted after the mark. So why don't we put mark after mark? And we just hit down. Alright? Add subtable and anchor class mark. Now, as I stated, we don't want to add any of the, using this anchor control dialog. We don't want to add the glyphs like that because it's just a bit buggy. We want to add them in the char view. So now that we've got that, let's hit OK and let's add them. So add an anchor and mark. Alright. And then we want to put the base here. And mark. And this will be the base mark. And let's hit OK on that. And over here, let's just enable the mark. And there we go. We've got cocoa. Alright. Why don't we copy these and do the same for cuckoo? But first I want to talk a little bit about how the stacking works. So we've got to do a little conceptualization. Our base glyph here is the ka, and the mark is applied to the ka. And then the mark is applied to the kudlit O, which is applied to the kudlit O, which is applied to the ka. And that's how it works. So if we want to change the order of stacking, we've got to change these little guys around. The base is here, and this is the mark. So we can think of all of this being copied and pasted right here on the base. And these two will line up. So we've got, it will stack to the right with the mark first and the base. If we want it to stack to the left, let's just switch the order. Like that. There we go. Now we've got stacking to the left. And to make this even more painfully obvious, why don't I add a few more, right? Delete. So now we've got like a co. And that would probably never happen in real script. I'm pretty sure 3 is the limit, in the Tagalog language. You sometimes have words like, matutunaw, right? That's 2. Mag-aaral, maybe maaaring, but I don't think you're ever going to have more than max 3. So this is only for demonstration. Alright, so we've got our pieces here of the puzzle. And let's add a few spaces so we can see it better. There we go. So let's say we've got 5 all stacked up. Co. That's what that says. So where these go is very important to how it stacks. You see how they move around? Now we're stacking to the right. If we put the mark here, this is really silly. This would never happen. But now we're stacking up and through the letter. Likewise, if we switch them, now we're stacking down. You see that? So, yeah. In our case, we want to stack to the right. Now, you should be aware if you have mixed little guys. For example, in the Tagalog script, the ku and the ko can stack like this. Let's get our ku here, and let's just paste it in. Here's our ku. Paste in our marks. So let's say that instead of ko, 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 now we've got ko, ku, ko, ko, ko. Alright. But if we start changing these around, see what starts happening? Now we're really getting weird in our stacks. So if you're gonna be stacking elements that are supposed to go together, make sure that the mark and the base are in the same positions in each, or we start to get really, really weird stacks here. You know, if I stick another oo here, wow, what has even happened, right? So let's keep it simple, right? These are only stacking down, and usually, you know, you're not gonna have like stacking down and then to the right and then down. You know, let's not even worry about that. We're not trying to make a Zalgo font here. We're just trying to make a normal font for a normal script like this. You know, I would love to know if there's a language which does it that way. I can't think of one. But, you know, if there is, maybe that feature is useful. But, yeah, so now we've got it. We've got koku, koku, ko. And, you know, that's what that says. But by buying, of course, it stacks right. So we want to stack it right like this. And we'll go over here, and we will likewise fix that. Yeah, wow, we have got quite the imaginative stacking right there. But here we are. Now, of course, if you have this many stacks, you might even want to use alternates to help push everything over. You know, I'm not going to show that because, like I said, the max is really 3 here. So, and really it would never even be more than 2. Maybe somebody better than Tagalog can think of a word that's going to have 3. Yeah, alright. So, that is mark. And now in the next portion, I will talk about the Latin way of doing things in composition and decomposition. Okay, so in the last segments, I've only talked about our Bibayan font, which was very useful for understanding mark and mark, but it is not really totally applicable to everyday life. Most people are not making fonts for the Bibayan script of the Tagalog language. As much as the world would be a better place if people were, they aren't. So let's focus on reality and quit out of all of this and look at our Chomsky font. Now this font it uses a lot of Latin scripts. You know, it supports a lot of letters that someone could consider maybe a bit esoteric, but you know, they're used by somebody. And I've even gotten, you know, when I made this font, I accidentally forgot to add the little stroke to the Latin small letter L, and a Polish person noticed and emailed me. So these are used and they are worth adding, even if you only speak English. I don't speak the languages that use these. You know, yo puedo hablar un poco de español, pero all the other languages, and I just said I can speak a little Spanish, but what is that? The Enye and a few of these acutes, you know, but I can't speak, you know, like German. That would need that one, or maybe a little Esperanto that uses, okay. Anyway, let's talk about it. So, with these so-called legacy scripts, right, these were added in computer systems before the Unicode standard became popularized. And back then, most of the scripts were added via precomposed glyphs. So, new scripts that are added to Unicode, the Unicode Consortium requires a very good reason to add a precomposed character. They don't like to do it anymore. Like the Tagalog script, they don't want to add ki, ku, ko as separate letters. They want you to encode that as an E followed by a combining mark. So to be quite frank, all of these glyphs down here, they really aren't needed. They could just be an A followed by a combining diareses. Or an A with a ring above could just be an A followed by a combining ring above. This one is needed. But a lot of these are not needed at all. And they're here for legacy purposes. And we call these pre-combined characters. And that's what the Unicode composition decomposition table is for. So FontForge has a few things to help us work with. Oh, one last thing. Spacing characters. So, another niggle here are the spacing characters. And this is another legacy feature of Unicode. These spacing characters, again, to be quite frank, they aren't needed. For example, if they were totally needed, sorry, those aren't the spacing characters. Where are they? These guys, these little guys right here. Wait, no. Oh, that's right. I didn't add spacing characters to this font. Sorry about that. So, yes, usually there are spacing characters. And let me just type like, okay, it seems like I have that one, but there's like, oh, okay, I guess they're just scattered around. That's not how I really remembered it. I remembered there being oh, there they are. Here we go. So like modifier letter left arrowhead, or modifier letter double prime, or, you know, all these little modifier letters down here. You know, you've got the breve, which is just a spacing breve. You've got the dot above and the ring above, and I don't have those. I have a combining ring above, but no ring above. You know, the ogonek. I don't know if I said that right. I've got a combining ogonek, but no ogonek. So why do these exist? They exist because of legacy systems. Old computers would just output it as a spacing character. Old computers did not really support languages other than English very well. Computer systems, you know, in their earliest days were very Anglo-centric, we could say. And those systems that did support other languages did not do it via combining characters, usually. So we have these here as just a way to write like a Hungar umlaut, as they call it, which is a Hungarian umlaut, as like a single spacing character. But these days, if Unicode is adding a new script, they won't add any spacing characters. I recommend, if you're working in FontForge, if you don't need to add the spacing characters, don't bother, because they're just not really relevant to fonts today. If you do add them, fortunately, it's possible to have FontForge prefer the Unicode character above the spacing character now. It wasn't before. If you go to File and Preferences here, you can go and make sure that this, let's see, font info, accents, right? Prefer spacing accents, you should turn that off so that the combining characters will be used. Now, let's have a look at our combining characters. You can see I've got a tilde here. Let's look at the N, right? So here's in the 4. Let's look at our N. Alright. So when these are combined, we get the N tilde, which is used in the Spanish language, among others. So you can see we've got our mark top here. And just like before, this is a base. And we've got our mark top here. And just like before, this is a mark. Now, FontForge can automatically build these legacy pre-combined characters, which are still used a lot in computer systems. I'm not saying they aren't. You absolutely have to support them. I'm just explaining why they're here. You know, if everything was starting from scratch, we wouldn't have these, but we do, so we do need to work with them. So you can just go to element build, build accented. Now, FontForge will also try to build an accented if you don't have marks. Let me delete these 2 marks and show you. If you go to element build accented, it'll try, and you see how it moved a little bit? FontForge made a guess as to what it should look like. Let's also look at, for example, the O grave. Not sure what language that's used in, but if I delete the mark there and we go to the O grave and we build it, you can see how it moved. Now sometimes FontForge makes a good guess, and those 2 look fine to me. But there are times when FontForge makes a bad guess. For example, let's say, let us see here. Let me see. I'm trying to remember which one might be bad. Let's say this D with a combining Karen, which, by the way, is not exactly correct according to somebody that actually speaks that language. Okay, no. The G with the circumflex, right? Let's look at this. So I'm quite sure that if I delete this mark and then I try to rebuild the G with the circumflex, we're gonna get a weird result. Oh, no. Okay, you know. I can't think of one that looks bad. Maybe if I delete the mark from the combining circumflex, let's try that. Maybe that'll fix it. But yeah, it's funny, we're trying to make it look ugly on purpose to prove a point. But, alright, you know, forget it. What I'm going to say is, if you have these marks and these accents, eventually you will run into situations where it doesn't look its best. So, you can control exactly FontForge's output with these marks, and I recommend doing that. For example, if I move this mark like this, and then I rebuild it, FontForge will respect what I've just done. If I put the mark way down here, you know, FontForge will respect that. Now that's a really ugly output, but this allows you to control how FontForge builds your accented characters. It'll do its best as long as you have the accent and the base, but you should add these marks. Let's see here. Let's rebuild that. There we go. Now, I've actually also added a feature that I'm going to talk about. If let's say this is an example. So this is a D with a Karen. Now, in some old ways of writing the language this is used in, that would be the Czech language, I'm 90% sure. The D with the Karen was handwritten like this, but it was written in a type system with a little apostrophe. So if we go to element glyph info components, we can change how this is built. If we try to build this right now, this D with the Karen, it's not even wanting to build because I don't have the combining apostrophe. So why don't we just, for demonstration's sake, copy this over, and I'll show what I mean here. Let's see, combining apostrophe. Maybe combining comma above also, now that I think about it. And FontForge has like weird, oh no, it doesn't, okay. Combining turned comma above, maybe. Maybe combining reversed, combining, oh, it's combining comma above right. I'm pretty sure of that. Yes, okay. Alright, so now if we try to build it, you see how that looks really quite strange? And it's not even within the thing here. It's not even within the glyph. So if we write another glyph right after that, oops, crash. So we could fix that with anchors. But let's say that we actually want it to look how I made it, right? For some reason we want to use that old system, or for any other reason. Sometimes conlangers want to change how glyphs are built. So we can uncheck use default, and we can just put in the code for the combining Karen above, right? So let's find it. Or the combining circumflex. No, Karen. Alright, 030C. So we can just do that. 0C. And hit OK. And if we go back here and we say element build accented, boom, it will build how I built it. So, yeah, you can change how any glyph is built now. You couldn't in some of the old releases. You know, we could do the same thing here. Now, why would you want to build an E with the diacritics above as a E with the caret above? I have no idea. Now, we can imagine like a silly font, right? With like an O being used as the ring above for the A. And we can do that quite easily. Just element, glyph info, you know, uncheck. Let's say we want the O. Pretty sure that would be 6C. No, maybe F. There we go. Okay. And we can build it just like that. Boom. Now you'll notice they appeared right on top of each other. That's because there's no anchors. We can also build as a composite, like that. Let's say that we want a certain glyph to be, like, I don't know, a word, right? Let's just have AO right now. You know, we can do that. Build composite. And if we look here, we'll see, wow, we've got, you know, AO. Now, that could help you with building ligatures. I have a font named KJV1611 where I have a lowered ligature where that's really useful for. Yeah, you know, it's up to you how you use this feature. Now, let's fix our AO, shall we? So let's go to glyph info components and make it 616F. And let's rebuild it. Now you'll notice they're on top of each other because there's no anchors. So let's fix that. So A has a marked top. And let's just go to O here. And why don't we give it a mark, you know? Let's add an anchor. And we'll call this one a mark top. And O is a mark now, you know? It's got a mark. And why not, right? You know, there's... this is just a silly, you know, example, but... hey, there we go. It's an A with a ring above. Now, this is going to be very offensive to my Swedish viewers, if I have any. So, I'm not saying that that's good typography, my friends. I'm just saying it's something we can do here. Yeah, you know, I think that's pretty much it. These characters, you should add marks to these guys, and you can just build them. And if you want to change how they're built, you can. I showed how. One final thing. Actually, I'll do that in the next section. I know this has been a long video, but there's one final thing. The ccmp table, the Unicode decomposition composition table. So, let's look at our OpenType font. Right now, there is a certain sequence that goes wrong in this font. When we have the alternate raw followed by the pumudpud, they crash together. I fixed this with contextual alternates. I created a so-called pumudpud.alt, which is replaced contextually if there is a raw.alt and then a pumudpud. But there's another way that I could have fixed that, and that's with Unicode composition decomposition, or OpenType. So let's delete the table so that I can show that. Let's delete the contextual alternate table so that we don't have it even as an option. You know, let's just get rid of it. Press OK. So another way I could have fixed that is by using the decomposition. So let me show you what I mean. I could have added a glyph. Let's add an encoding slot. 1. And I could have added a glyph here, which would just be built from the raw.alt, which is 171F, and the pumudpud, which I think it's 1734, yes. So let's do a quick build here. There we are. And maybe we could build composite even. No, okay. So now we can just move our pumudpud into place, and we have this glyph here which represents the two of them together. So if we want this to be used, we can consider this, because the pumudpud is a combining character. It's basically just like an accent in Latin scripts. We can think about it as like a tilde below or a tilde above. if we want to change how that looks and not use the mark, because, for example, let's say that the pamudpud, usually it doesn't need a mark, so it seems weird to add a mark just for one glyph, we can use the ccmp instead. So why don't we go to Element, Font Info, and add a lookup. This is G sub, G substitution. So add lookup. This will be a ligature substitution. That's just the name of it, right? And we will check here, ccmp. Hit OK. Add subtitle, table, and so the ligature glyph name. Alright, let's make sure that we give our glyph a name, Element glyph info, just so we have something to call this by. This is raw alt pamudpud. There we are. Okay, back to font info, and so our ligature glyph name is raw alt pamudpud, and the source glyphs are raw.alt and pamudpud. Okay. And now if we select ccmp, it's fixed. It's basically just like a ligature. You could also probably do it with the ligature table, but it's better to do it in the decomposition table. That way, even if ligatures are disabled, it will appear. Anyway, that's it. Those are the tables. You could use ccmp for any time you want to make a precomposed character where none exists. Now, you might not want to abuse it, but, technically it's possible for me to not use mark at all in this font. And I could just use precomposed characters for everything. I could make ka, ki, ku, ko, and have 4 precomposed characters. And if you've noticed, I've actually got a few here for the ra. And that's just because I had a little bug in my browser, because it didn't want to use the ra, because the ra is an unencoded code point. I submitted a proposal to the Unicode Consortium to encode U plus 170D. So, but while they're still working on that, I needed these just so that I could properly lay it out in my browser. So those are supposed to be temporary. Hopefully they approve it so that they are. Anyway, that's it. This was quite the topic, wasn't it? What a video. So long. I've been at this all night here. When I got into it, I thought, won't be that long, and now here we are. So I hope you learned something. Happy font founding, or happy font founding as always. God bless you. Let me know if you have any other questions, and thank you very much for watching.